to all my true crimers and ASMR fans. Which is why I'm whispering, because it brings a calming sense to the mind and the brain. And if you want, I can leave you a description of what it is, but it gives you tingles sometimes, but it is very calming and relaxing. That's why I'm whispering. So tonight, I'm going to finish the true, very, very scary part of the Taylor Mill Horror House. And last night we just got into it. He just started to really come in contact with the spirits that live in the house. As a non-believer, he was taking his life into his own hands, and he didn't even know it. So what do you think will happen to Sam tonight as we continue our read in a whispered ASMR style? ASMR. I will be reading to you. My name is Jody. Thank you for joining me tonight. I appreciate all of you, all my subscribers, all of my viewers, anybody who comments. I'm more than happy to reply, and I love to hear what you all think. So we left off at chapter 8. The Taylor Mill Horror, a true story. So before I start reading, if you are sensitive to any kind of ghost or any kind of demon possession, are under the age of 14, I really highly recommend that you do not watch this video. But if you love this kind of stuff like I do, then continue on, because tonight it gets really, really good. I promise. Chapter 8. Sam, you got a minute? Yeah, sure, what's up? I had already started to grow a bond with Tom. He knew how to keep things positive and lighthearted. Of course, I had a second. I couldn't go anywhere. I put in all my time for vacation to be here for the investigation. While we have some time, and it's still light out, do you mind us just doing a quick interview? This will have to be included with the whatever we capture here. Not only does the church need evidence, but they also put people through psychological evaluations to make sure, that you're not crazy and wasting everybody's time. So, he said, I think that if we just do a quick interview, they can see that's not the case here, Tom said. Well, there was one point where I honestly thought that was the case. I was certain that I was losing my mind. Sometimes I even wish that I was. I could not and did not want to fathom the idea of any of this being real. We fully understand that, but we fully understand that we're here now to tell you that you're not crazy and we're going to see you through this. Tom said while patting me on the back, "How about you take a seat on the couch and we will set this camera up on a tripod over here. Tripod over here. Hey Irv, can you bring in another camera and a digital audio recorder?" "Yeah, all batteries should be charged up. I got it right here." All their equipment was sprawled across the dining room table. I didn't know what half of it was other than the cameras and the audio recorders. There were all kinds of gadgets, speakers and lights and wires and batteries everywhere. It gave me anxiety just looking at that table. It was such a mess, but they seemed to know where everything was and how it all worked. They placed a camera on a tripod right in front of me and one to the side. They said that this was because spirits like to drain energy from the batteries, so they wanted to have a backup camera in case one of them was interfered with. Tom sat down on the couch next to me while Irv sat down in the chair that Father Shaver had been thrown out of just a few days prior. "My name is Tom, this is Irv, and we are sitting here with the owner of this home, Sam, who believes that this home is infested with demonic entities. So tell me, Sam, when did you first suspect that there was something going on here?" Well, honestly, it took a while. I didn't believe in this type of stuff. I thought it was all myths that people made up to feel better, knowing that death isn't final. So early on, I just wrote things off that now, looking back, were probably paranormal. "What kind of things?" Tom said. "Well, for starters, the whole house was cold, oddly cold. It was only in certain rooms, though. The attic was the one that really perplexed me. Attics are supposed to be warmer than the rest of the house, but not here. Then there was the incident with Brutus." I sighed. For the record, Brutus was the name of his dog, who he believed was killed by the entity in his home. What happened with him? He was thrown down the stairs. At the time, I figured he just fell down the stairs. But he was just standing there, and then the next thing I knew, he was rolling down the stairs crying. He didn't like it up there. Interesting. When did you notice the most activity, or when do you notice the most activity? Tom corrected himself. Is there a certain time or condition that seems to stir things up? Tom asked. Honestly, no. It's constant. It's constant at this point. At first, we would get woken up in the middle of the night around 3 in the morning, but now it's all day, every day. We haven't yet to experience anything since we've been here that we can say is paranormal. What do you think that is? I was almost offended that Tom asked this question. It was like he was attacking me or calling me a liar. Then I remembered that this was to prove that there is something going on here and we needed to cover all bases. I'm not sure. Maybe they aren't here, or maybe they are scared now that you're here. I don't know if that was the right thing to say. I guess they are being cowards. You think they're scared. I think they are. I think they're afraid that they may have finally met their match. We all paused for a moment as we watched in shock and horror. The main camera that had set up to record the interview slowly lifted off the ground, flipped upside down, and was dropped onto the table, creating a loud bang. Well, maybe they are here, Herb said. Everyone was tense. Everyone was tense. Everyone was tensed up and didn't seem to know how to quite react. We just sat there in silence with our mouths wide open, looking at the camera now lying on its lens. If this wasn't evidence enough of paranormal, then I don't know what is. Have you seen anything like this? Tom asked, finally breaking the silence. Not quite like that. No, I have had things fly across the room, and I've had them crash onto the floor, but I've never seen it with my own eyes. That was just wow. Well, Tom said while standing up, I think we've got their attention. We better strike while the iron is hot. Grab your stuff and let's get started. I had a bad feeling about this, Herb said. It must have dropped 10 degrees in here already. Nothing human could have that much power to drop it so quickly. Everything will be fine. We've been on all these types of cases many times before. There's nothing that they can throw at us that we've never seen before. Tom replied, trying to reassure us, but damn, he couldn't have been more wrong. Chapter 9. The sun was beginning to set, and the amber light was shining through the windows. The mood in the home changed from a playful to a very serious one. Irv and Tom were running around the dining room table, taking inventory of everything that they had, and making sure that all their batteries were charged. The problem with places like these, Tom said while replacing the battery in his camera, is that the entities will drain your batteries. They use the energy to manifest themselves, move objects, speak with us, all those things that you see in horror movies. However, this does tell us one thing. There must be multiple human spirits here as well. Demons don't need to draw energy. They are far more powerful than any human spirit can be. I just put the battery in this 2 minutes ago and it's already dead. That means there is someone else here that wants to communicate with us. The little girl, I asked. Perhaps, but I have a strange feeling that there is much more than just her here. How much do you know about this area? Tom asked. Well, I know it's a quiet area with not many houses. That's about it, I replied. We do extensive background checks on areas before we come out to try to get information that may help us. One of the things that we check for is crime. See if there might be anything that could stir up some activity. Often acts of violence can invite evil in, much like the Amityville case. Most of the places that we check, unfortunately, have sexual predators in the area, typically 3 to 4 of them. This place, however, has 4 pages of them in this tiny little town. What does that mean? I said, flabbergasted. Had I known this information before, I would have never moved my daughter here. Even if we did get rid of whatever was in this house, I didn't want to live here anymore. Could mean something, could mean nothing. We just found it quite odd. Yes, that's very odd for that tiny town. Noteworthy that there was such a large congregation of them in this area. There is little to no crime at all in this area except for that. All that we do know is that something bad happened on this land, and we have a psychic medium coming in to see if she can't tell us more, give us more information to aid in our investigation. investigation. Hopefully we can come up with some names or even how many entities we are dealing with here. The psychic medium, like those on TV. I wanted to laugh, but then I realized that I would have never believed in any of this that was going on. My mind was open to the possibility that anything is possible. Anything is possible. There was a knock at the door. I was so on edge, I jumped at the sound. Irv and Tam both looked up at me and started laughing. Relax there, Sam. This knocking is coming from a living person. I'm sure that's her now. I just texted her to let her know that we were about to get started, Tom said. Oh, she must live close then. Have you worked with her before? Tom walked into the kitchen and I heard the door open, followed by the familiar voice of a female. This is not good, she said. I recognized that voice, but how? I heard the door close, followed by 2 sets of footsteps approached from the kitchen. Hi again, she said nervously. It was the neighbor who lived back behind me that I had spoken to the day Brutus died. Hi, I didn't expect you, I'm sorry. I don't know if I ever got your name. Yeah, I didn't expect to be here either. I saw these 2 pull up while I was walking my dogs. We stopped and talked and they asked me to come by tonight. I've never stepped foot inside this house, and while I was always curious about it, I told myself I'd never come in here, but here I am. My name is Sasha, by the way. Nice to meet you. I just wish it was under different circumstances. Yeah, me too, she said, wide-eyed as she peered around the room. Do you have any water, she asked. I just salted my driveway to make sure that nothing will be able to follow me back home, and I worked up quite a thirst, she said, followed by a nervous laugh. Absolutely, let me get you some. I said, walking into the kitchen. I grabbed a glass out of the cupboard and filled it with water from the water cooler that sat in the kitchen. Here you are, I said while handing it to her. Her hands were shaking and she was shivering. She held the glass with both hands and took a sip and then held it in front of her body. The water was filled with waves from her shaking as she stood there and scanned the room without moving. Do you mind if I just walk around? She said. No, please. Please do. Irv grabbed the full spectrum. We need to document this, Tom said. This is a really nice home, not quite what I expected. I know the guy who bought this, gutted it all out. He did a really nice job. You know, something weird. When they were gutting the home, I was walking by with my dogs one day. Some workers approached me and asked if I like seashells. I said, I guess so. Why? They pulled out 32 gallon trash cans full of seashells from up in the attic. They said that they had been behind the wall in between the joists. Why would those have been up there? She said, peering over Tom. I read once that witches use those for protection, Irv said from the dining room. Huh, Sasha said as she continued to look around. Her eyes darted around the rooms like she was seeing things that we could not see. Alright, I'm just going to walk around. She walked into the kitchen and into the living room. What's over here, she said, pointing to the hallway. That's my daughter's room down the hall, and right there is the bathroom. Can I go in there? Yes, please. We followed behind her. Irv was in the back with his camera. She walked into the room and stopped in the corner, in the center. It's cold in here. Doesn't it feel cold in here? Like colder than the rest of the rooms? Yes, it definitely is colder in here, said Tom. So you said this was your daughter's room. She rocked around the room, peering at every corner and still holding onto the glass of water with both hands. "I don't like this," she said while pointing at the closet. "There's someone in there. It's another girl. She's scared. There's a man here too, her father. He was an alcoholic and used to beat her and her brother. And her brother isn't here, but she's not the only one." She took her right hand off the glass and covered her face, and she began to cry. "There's lots of them here, 22 to be exact. Who did this to you all?" She is saying that their bodies are somewhere on this property. Hers is down in the well. The others are scattered around, buried. They were brought here, and I have to get out of here, she said quickly, turning around, seeming as if she just snapped out of a trance and back into reality. She quickly walked past us and out the door, and we followed suit behind her. "What's up here?" she asked while standing at the bottom of the stairs. "There are 2 rooms up there. I don't know what the one used to be used for, but the other is an unfinished attic." "Well, let's go take a look." She got halfway up the stairs and suddenly stopped, dropping her glass, which rolled off the stairs and fell into the dining room below. Nope, we're not going up there." She quickly turned around in hysteria and walked down the stairs. We quickly jogged off the stairs we were standing on to get out of her way. I never believed in psychics, even when they told me that they called one to come here today. I just couldn't shake that one. Thought the stair that she stopped on was the same stair that Brutus stopped on before he was pushed down the stairs. I wasn't sure what that meant, but it had me believing her even more. She stepped into the dining room and picked up the glass that had fallen to the floor and handed it to me. "I'm sorry," she said. Whatever is up there is bad, really bad. I can't go up there. So, where to now?" "Don't worry about it. It's just water. Let me get you some more," I said. Taking the glass out of her hands, I returned to the water cooler and filled the glass back up before handing it to her. "Thanks," she said. "No problem. This is the dining room. In here and there is the living room, and connects to that is the master bedroom. And connected to that is the master bedroom." "Okay," she said while staring tentatively at the front door. "Let's check it out, I guess." We walked through the living room without making a mention of anything or even slowing down. When we then headed into my bedroom, where she seemed confused, almost as if she were lost. "There's something here. It's a woman. I think it might be the bad guy's wife. They're all here except for the son." She slowly started heading towards the bathroom. "I don't like this," she said, while pausing at the door. She took a deep breath and stepped inside. "There's something here too. It's bad. It's not the man though. It's something different." She looked down at the floor and saw the bullet holes down here. She bent over and ran her fingers over them. "What's this?" I froze. I felt stupid and weak for what had happened. One night I couldn't even finish a sentence. "Oh no, you tried to end it, didn't you?" "I didn't even hear anything." "How is this possible? I live right there. You'd think I would have heard the gunshots." "Well," Tom said, "the neighbors didn't hear the gunshots at the Amity Field either. So maybe there's something to that." "Huh. Well, I'm glad that you're here," she said, as she turned around and walked into the bathroom. "Is there anything else?" "Well, there's the basement and my workshop down here." "Lead the way," she said while gesturing her hands in front of her. I led the group through the kitchen and opened the door that housed the stairs that went down into the basement. Once again, Sasha led the group, followed by me, then Tom, then Irv with his camera still in hand. We reached the bottom of the stairs and walked into the large room that was at the bottom. "There is something down here too, something like what's upstairs. Neither of them are human. This room back back here. She gestured to the small room in the back. It was used for moonshine. In fact, there was a woman and a man there. They died here. I think the moonshine had something to do with it. That's the man and the woman that we met upstairs. I noticed that Tom looked back at Herb and smiled a large grin. Yeah, so about that. There was a man and a woman who died in this home 30 years ago. They died of carbon monoxide poisoning. The obituary said nothing about the moonshine, but then again, why would it? Their daughter is the one who fell down the well out here. We were hoping that you'd pick up on that, Tom said. So you two were testing me this whole time, huh? Sasha replied. There are a lot of people who claim to be psychic mediums. We just tried to weed out the real ones from the fakes, he said. Well, where is the workshop? Sasha asked. It's right down the hall. Please excuse me, it's still a mess. I never really got the chance to get it where I wanted it to be since everything has been going on. It's fine, Sasha repeated quickly. It's fine, Sasha repeated quickly. We walked down the dark hall and reached my workshop. It was an old swinging wooden door without a handle. A lock kept it closed from swinging open. I pulled my keys out of my pocket and took off the lock, then swung the door open. I gestured for Sasha to enter. This was his favorite room. Whose? I asked. The bad man, the one who terrorized his children, the one who died here with his wife. Maybe this is where he bottled the moonshine. I don't know. I just know he still likes to hang out here a lot. She turned around and her wide brown eyes made contact with mine. If you don't mind, I would like to try to go upstairs again. Of course, I just don't want you to overdo it. No, she replied. I have to do this. We walked back up the basement stairs with Sasha leading the way, slowly opening the door in the kitchen and walked towards the stairs. Anticipation grew with every single step as we inched closer and closer. She approached the steps and momentarily stood at the bottom, looking up. She stood bravely and took a final deep breath, grabbed the handle rail with a deep death grip. Slowly, step by step, we approached the first room upstairs. Everyone stayed silent. Herb was in the back trying to maneuver the camera around me to record Sasha as she climbed the stairs. Finally, we reached the final stair. She entered the center of the room and stared at the window in the back. She turned around to face us. Huh, that's odd. I don't feel much in this room. It's a weird room, but there's nothing here. She looked into the unfinished room ahead of her with almost a death stare. She crept closer until she approached the door. It's in there, she said, pointing to the room. No way in hell that I'm going in there. It's evil. Pure evil. She stood there trembling, and I was afraid that she was going to pass out. She turned around and looked, and the look on her face was pure terror, as if she saw someone die right in front of her. It's not of this planet. It never walked this earth before. The amount of hate and evil is... I have to leave now. She looked at the stairs like she wanted to go down them, but couldn't move. She was frozen, but shaking at the same time. I went over and placed my hand on her back. Let's get you out of here, I said. Yes, she replied. I urged her towards the stairs with a gentle amount of force on her back. As soon as we got to the stairs, I went down first because I was in fear that she could be weak and fall down. After our descent down the stairs, she stood at the bottom looking up in shock as to whatever she had experienced up there. I would like to stay for a while, well, if that's okay. I just have to be out of here before dark. I don't want to be here in the night with whatever that thing is upstairs. Of course, have a seat on the couch. said. We all went to the living room and sat down. Sasha had the couch to herself. I sat in the armchair. Tom and Irv brought in chairs from the dining room. Our seats were fashioned in a way that we were sitting in a circle. For a while we sat in an awkward silence. Everyone's eyes were darting around the room, with each and every bump and creak that responded throughout the house. That resonated throughout the house. I haven't had a chance to tell you I'm sorry about the loss of your dog, Sasha said, breaking the silence. Thank you, it's been difficult. This place has destroyed my life, my family, and killed my dog. I just want my revenge. It was the old man, she said, while lowering her head to avoid any eye contact. He doesn't like dogs, for some reason. Maybe it's because dogs are so pure of heart, but he hates them. You have dogs, don't you? Tom asked. Yes, I have 3 of them. They are my children and my life, so I cannot imagine what you are going through, she said, while briefly making eye contact with me. This might sound crazy, but would you mind bringing one of your dogs over here? Tom asked very carefully, pausing between each word, knowing he was treading in dangerous waters. Bring my dogs over here, the place where one has already been killed by something that we cannot ever see, or not even see. She snapped back. We will protect him. If there are any signs of danger, you guys are out of here. The dog is a big claim that this thing supposedly killed his dog. It's an important piece to the puzzle, and everything that we can prove will just build our case to get the church down here and act faster. Shivering down. Sasha's posture quickly changed. She was now tensed up, and you could tell thoughts were racing in her mind. Would she be willing to risk the life of one of her babies for a guy that she barely knows? Honestly, I don't know that I would, but there was something special about this woman. Maybe it's the fact that she could feel and sense things that others cannot. Maybe she sensed my despair and depression. I will go get one, but as soon as I sense anything, we're out. Absolutely. We won't let anything bad happen to either of you, Tom promised. Sasha slowly got up off the couch and headed towards the door. My heart sank in fear of what could happen. This place had already destroyed my life, and the last thing I wanted to do was destroy the life of someone else. After we heard the door open and close, Tom jumped up off the couch and instantly got to work. The ghost box. We need the ghost box and a digital audio next to it. We need to get cameras set up in every corner of the room. If anything happens at all, we need to catch it. We've got one shot at this. Irv looked up and nodded his head. They both jumped into action, rifling through their equipment. They set up 3 cameras around the room. On the table sat a radio and a speaker. They explained to me again that the radio is actually what they called a ghost box, and that spirits can use it to communicate with us. I was extremely skeptical, but they hadn't steered me wrong thus far. So I played along. Just as they finished setting up the final camera, we heard the door open, and all our eyes were locked on the kitchen. I couldn't shake the feeling that something bad was about to happen. Chapter 10. Did you guys hear that? Sasha asked with a shocked look on her face. Hear what? Tom quickly replied. The woman screaming. It was loud, she said. When did this happen? Tom asked. Right as I walked back up here. It was just a loud scream coming from the house in a female's voice. This house. There's no way that you couldn't have heard it. Everyone stood perplexed with their mouths wide open. No, we didn't hear anything. Make sure you check all audio and cameras that we had rolling at the time, Tom said, while looking back at Irv. I got it. Were you the neighbor who called the police that one night? I asked, referring to the night that I was met with multiple squad cars in my driveway as I came home from work. Sasha shook her head no. I figured it was the lady over there. She pointed to the left where my only other real neighbor resided. I was surprised when I saw all the police here, but I didn't know you guys, and I didn't want to get into your business. I thought maybe one of y'all did something, but it wasn't me who called the police. I hear that enough to know what it is. In fact, every now and then, I would see the light in the attic on and someone walking around up there. The thing is, this was before you had moved in. So taken aback by Sasha's experience that we had completely overlooked the cute dog with the brightest blue eyes and long white hair lying on the ground next to her. There's something about dogs that just make you forget everything that's going on and smile. So true. I looked down. Our eyes met and my heart skipped a beat, but for once in a good way. This was until I remembered Brutus, my friend, my best friend, my only friend since all of this stuff started happening. I was overcome with sadness once again. Sasha took notice of me looking down at the dog. Oh, this is Jazz. He is usually really energetic and he would be up jumping on everyone. That's why I brought him. This is weird. I just never seen him just lay on the ground like this. Should I let him off his leash? Yeah, sure, I replied. Sasha unhooked the leash and Jazz just looked around, still lying on the ground. Maybe if we go into the living room and leave him here, but he will start to walk around. He might be a little overwhelmed by being in a new place with all the people, Irv said. That's not a bad idea. Let him get acquainted with his surroundings for a while, Tom replied. Sasha looked ready to protest until Tom added, we'll be in the next room and we'll keep eyes on him the entire time. She nodded. We have all moved into the living room and sat down watching Jazz with anticipation. After a few minutes he slowly got up and began to walk around. He started in the kitchen sniffing all of the cupboards, then disappeared into the hallway with Charlie's bedroom. After a while, he finally approached the stairs, the same stairs Brutus was thrown down. I wanted to say something. I wanted to stop him from going up there, but at the same time, I had to know. I had to know if it was this entity that threw my dog down the stairs before it killed him. A guilty feeling came over me as he climbed the first step, then the second, then the third. And he got to the fourth step. He froze in his path and began to cry. What's wrong, baby? Sasha asked. Jazz continued looking up the stairs, crying. Refusing to look away, out of nowhere he spun around the stairs and ran down at full speed. There was something up there that he obviously didn't like. Sasha jumped up and ran over to comfort him. Shit, she exclaimed as she reached out to console the frantic dog. What's wrong? I asked. He bit me, she replied. As she turned around, I could see blood running down her hand and wrist. Let me go get something. I ran into the kitchen and grabbed some Band-Aids and hydrogen peroxide. As I came back out of the bathroom, I saw that she was now sitting on the couch, holding her hand, and Jazz was sitting at her feet, looking up and crying. Here, let me put some of this on, I said, opening the bottle of peroxide. I dipped a few small drops on her index finger that was quickly seeping blood. I opened up the Band-Aid and put it tightly over her wound. He has never done that before, even to people he doesn't know. Let me alone. Let alone me that he sees and that takes care of him every day. He has never done that. Ever. Something must have spooked him pretty bad up there, Tom replied. Irv was off into the background, running around with the camera trying to get the best angles of all the action that was taking place. Why don't we try getting some answers with this, Tom said, while holding the device he referred to as the ghost box. He sat down an audio recorder onto the table. After hitting the record, he then turned on the ghost box and set it down next to it. The room was filled with static. as the device quickly swept between frequencies. Is somebody here? Tom asked, yelling loud enough for his voice to be heard over the static. Here, a male voice said, coming through the speaker. Here, replied another voice. Sounded like a younger woman. Here, replied another voice. The last voice sent chills down everyone's spine. If I were to imagine the voice of the devil, this is what it would sound like. It was the deepest, most guttural sound thing that I have ever heard. What is your name? Tom asked. There was a few seconds of pure static, followed by the deep voice coming through the speaker again. Diablo! It said it loud and clear. We all stood back in shock. Are you saying that you're the devil? Tom asked. Yes, replied the voice. How many of you are here? 22, replied the female voice. How many of you are demons? Tom yelled. At this point, we were literally at the edge of our seats. I'm not sure if it was in anticipation to hear the response or to get ready to run out of the house. 2 of us, replied a male voice. And who are you? Tom asked. Satan, replied the male voice. Why are you here? Tom asked. Then a voice even more horrifying than the deep voice claiming to be Diablo came across. I'm not sure how to even explain it other than inhuman, almost alien. It was high-pitched like nails being run across a chalkboard. Kill the dog, it said. Then a voice even more horrifying than the deep voice claiming to be No. Instantly, Sasha picked up her dog off the ground and held him close to her body. All right, we're out of here. It just said kill the dog. It is not touching my dog. She was trembling despite her firm voice. You cannot follow me home. Do you hear me? Do you hear me? She yelled over the static. Dog's dead, the male voice replied. You will not harm my dog or anyone else here. You will not follow us home, she yelled back. The deep voice was heard laughing through the speaker. Turn it off, she yelled at Tom. He grabbed the ghost box and turned it off. The room was filled with pure silence. I'm going to go now, and we will not be back. You guys have a good night, she said before turning around and walking out of the room, still carrying her dog. Holy shit, Tom said with a smile on his face. That was absolutely nuts. That just proves everything. Tell me we got all of that. Yeah, we got it, replied Irv, still holding the camera, now pointing at Tom. Holy crap, that was just wow. So what do we do now, I asked. I need to go have a smoke, Irv said. I thought you quit, Tom said. I did, but today seems like a good day to start again. So they all step out of the house. Can I bum a smoke? Tom asked. I thought you quit, Irv replied. Today seems like a good day to start. So, then they offered him Sam a cigarette. He said no thanks. I used to drink a lot, but I gave it up. He asked about his family. He said, I don't know. He put his head down at the side. I don't know. Father Schaefer told me that I shouldn't be in contact with them until all of this is over. I think about them all the time. Hell, I even pray for them. I just hope they're doing a lot better than I am. He said, I'm sure they are doing just fine, Tom said. He said, there's a lot of spirits here that are ghosts, but what about the demons? Why are they here? I asked. Demonic entities must be invited. There are many ways that this can ever happen. There were obviously rumors about satanic worship on this land, but we heard that just about every location that we go, if kids were brought here and killed, something that terrible could also involuntarily invite these types of entities in. Whoever lived here before you, knew about what was going on here, and they were involved in the occult. That's why they found all of those seashells. They were trying to offer themselves some sort of protection from these entities. It is also possible that they somehow invited these entities in. We'll probably never know the truth. The only thing that is for certain is they are here, and there are multiple demonic entities on this land, not just your home, and they are trapping these poor souls here with them. We owe it to them to get the bottom of this. We stood there in silence, the sound of bugs buzzing around, and the light above our head, and the occasional puff of smoke. What the hell is that sound? Irv said. I don't hear anything. Shh, 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 Tom said. Irv said. Listen, Irv said while looking down the road. Suddenly we all heard it. We all heard it. Something that none of us could have explained. There was a sound of hooves coming down the road along with what sounded like wagon wheels. Roaring behind it like a horse-drawn carriage was coming down the road. It was like in the middle of the night, but we saw nothing. We just stood there in astonishment as it came all the way down the road and then directly past the front of the house where we stood. You guys heard that right? Irv said excitedly. Yeah, it was a carriage and horses, but there was nothing there, Tom replied. What the hell was it? I asked. I don't know. I have heard of ghost carriages before, but I never believed in the stories. I thought they were just urban legends. What the hell is going on with this property? Is this whole town haunted? A cold wind swept across the porch and the temperature outside instantly dropped. We were all standing there shivering, trying to stay warm. It just got cold as hell out here. I'm going back in, Irv said, putting his cigarette out on the porch. Yeah, me too, Tom replied, flipping his cigarette out into the street. Irv opened the door and stepped inside. We followed closely behind. As soon as the door closed, there was a bright flash of light that came from upstairs. It illuminated their entire hallway and sent shadows from the railing into the living room. Let's go, Tom shouted, while grabbing the camera that they were using earlier off the table. Irv grabbed the audio recorder and a ghost box that was sitting next to it, and they both jogged up the stairs. I stood there alone in the living room for a bit. I didn't want to go back up there, not again. However, at the same time, I didn't want to be left alone. I reluctantly followed them and walked up the stairs. By the time I got up there, they were sitting on the floor in the finished room looking into the unfinished attic. I sat down on the floor with my feet on top of the step. I will admit that after what I saw up here, I was terrified and wanted a quick escape route. Go place this inside of that room, Tom said, holding up the ghost box. I don't want to go in there, Irv quickly replied. It's right there. Just run in real quick and put it on the ground. Why don't you do it then? Tom sighed and stood up, looked into the darkness. It was at this point where my fear grew. Since the time that they got here, they were the ones who calmed me down, gave me a sense of hope. Seeing them this afraid scared the crap out of me. Tom took a final deep breath and walked into the room and set the ghost box on the floor. The static echoed off the walls in there. After sitting it down, he turned around and jogged out of the room before dropping to the ground. It reminded me of someone lighting the fuse of some fireworks on the 4th of July, then running away to a safe distance before turning around and looking back for it to go off. After he sat down, I could tell that he was out of breath and his heart was racing from the 20-foot venture into the attic. Is anybody there? Tom asked. We are, a voice replied. Who is we? Tom replied. Legion, the voice quickly replied. There's something walking around in here. I can see shadows moving, Irv said. Suddenly there was a loud crash that came from downstairs, almost like the blast of a shotgun. I was no longer safe. My escape route now led to whatever was down there. We were trapped and without saying a word, we all knew it. There was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. Tom and Irv were visually shaking at first. I thought of fear, but then I felt that the temperature had dropped so low we couldn't see our breath. Frost was collecting on the windows back behind them. I wanted nothing more than to get out of this room, because I knew what was coming would not be good. "Why are you here?" Tom shouted. "Kill Sam," it replied. My heart completely sank. Not only did it want me dead, it was calling me out by my name. They both looked at me to see how I reacted to the voice. I was doing my best to hold it together. I was filled with mixed emotions. Part of me wanted to cry, part of me wanted to run, and part of me wanted to reach out and strangle whatever this was. "Maybe we should get out of here," Irv said. "Hold on, things are just getting good. Keep that camera pointed over there. I don't believe that you're the devil." "You keep telling me as you are, Diablo. But other than that, then some bangs. You haven't showed us anything yet." "I'm going to kill Sam," the voice said. "You can't kill him. You don't have enough power to, and God is protecting him. Do you know the entity in the basement?" "That's Beelzebub. It said it in the same deep voice. "Well, if that's Beelzebub and you're Diablo, then you should be able to communicate with him and tell him to do something there right now. Then maybe I'll start to believe." But before he could finish his sentence, we heard the basement door slam closed. I know we shut it after we came up from there earlier, so whatever it was, I had to open it and then slam it shut. Those are parlor tricks. Any entity can do that. Why don't you show us something good? With every question that Tom asked, I could see that Irv grew more nervous. He was coaxing him, he was prodding him, he's forcing the spirit to grow angry. That's not good. Thud, thud, thud. I was trapped, mute, and frozen. There were loud footsteps coming from the attic now. It sounded like hard soul's shoes walking on the wood floor. They started in the back of the room and moved closer to the main walkway that was visible through the door. "Holy shit, do you see it?" Irv exclaimed. "Do you see it?" "No, screw that." Irv quick shot up like a rocket and ran to the stairs. I was still sitting there with my feet on top of the stairs. He gripped the railing and jumped over my legs and cleared the first 4 stairs before running down the remainder of the steps. We heard him run all the way through the living room and finally out the front door. I was still frozen in fear, and Tom was still sitting there, now looking at the stairs with his mouth wide open. We simultaneously shot up and ran down the stairs. I had no idea what he had witnessed, but it made him run out of the home. I sure as hell wasn't going to stay and find out. We ran into the living room at the front door, and the front door was wide open. Swarms of moths were flying in. We walked outside to see him in the front yard puffing on a cigarette as if it was the last one of his life. "What happened in there?" Tom asked. Irv slowly turned to him and put a giant puff from his cigarette, exhaling a plume of smoke into the air. He was shaking and looked like he was about to throw up. "You won't believe it," he replied. I had never seen someone so overcome with fear in my life. He stood in the yard shaking like a dog, turning a horrible thunderstorm with the look of death on his face. I knew whatever he encountered up there was worse than anything I could ever imagine. "It was him," Irv said, while looking at the ground, still shaking. "The old man?" I asked. No, him," he replied. "You don't mean," Tom said. "Yes, I do mean. How did he get here? This makes no sense. There's no way that we show up here just by chance that he's here. Are you sure it was him?" Tom was clearly worked up. idea what they were talking about. Look, I know what the hell I saw. It was him, he shouted. Jesus Christ, how is this even possible? I thought you were rid of him. Will somebody please tell me what the hell is going on? And who the hell is you two are talking about? I shouted. I need a damn drink, Irv said. I have some moonshine out in the van. I know we have a rule against drinking when we're on the case, but I think we can make an exception. Guys, go inside, seal off the living room with holy water and salt. I'll bring the shine, Tom replied. Chapter 11. We were huddled around the dining room table with 4 bottles of holy water in the center. A thick line of salt was laid across the floor and windows to prevent anything from entering, even though every light on the floor was on. Everything still felt so dark. What if it was in this room when we went to seal it off with the salt? I asked. Then it's trapped in this room with us, but I think we would know if it was by now. Tom grabbed the bottle of moonshine and sat in the center of the table. I'll go grab some glasses from the kitchen, I said. Just as I stood up and walked towards the kitchen, there was a loud crash. All the cabinet doors in the kitchen swung open with enough force that they hit the wall and bounced back. Every glass from the cupboard flew out and shattered on the floor. Well, looks like we're drinking out of the jar, I said as I turned around to head back to the table. I was so exhausted, and mentally and physically, that it didn't even frighten me that much. It was to the point where this type of activity was just normal and we accepted it. I sat back down at the table, clearly defeated. And we just drank out of the bottle. So are you guys going to tell me what is going on? I said. Irv quickly grabbed the jar again and took 2 more big drinks before sitting back and down and sliding it over to Tom. What's up there? It's been following me for years, Irv said. How has it been following you if it's been here this whole time? I asked. Irv shrugged in response. Whatever that entity is, people from all over have reported seeing it. They all describe it in the exact same way. The crazy thing is that it's not that well known. People only find out about it after they see it when it gets out on the internet and search for it, and they are shocked by all the accounts. Some say it's simply a shadowy spirit, but many say that he is known as Satan's right-hand man. Irv quickly grabbed the jar of moonshine that was sitting in front of Tom to take another drink. You might want to slow down. That's some strong stuff, Tom said to him. Well, I have a lot that I would like to forget, Irv replied. So what exactly is it? Does it have a name? No one knows its name for sure. That's one of the many mysteries surrounding it. Most people refer to it as Top Batman. The one thing that we do know, it is pure evil. Pure evil. Tom said while burying his head in both of his hands. It's been following me for years. I had a bad feeling after I heard about your dog. For some reason it hates animals. It kills them in every encounter that someone has with them. If they have pets, they either end up dead or turning on their owners. People have literally had their faces ripped off by the dogs they have had their entire lives. Irv said now, sitting at attention. Now that he had a few drinks in his system, I could tell that he had something he wanted to get off his chest. So that thing up there is what killed my dog. Irv nodded. How do we get rid of that? Irv laughed. If I knew, I would have gotten rid of it a long time ago. Every time that I thought it was gone, I would get a call from a friend or a loved one who was frightened because of things going on in their house. It was the same thing every time. Things flying up the walls, footsteps, a shadow figure darting around the room, and their animals being terrorized by an unseen force. How long has this been going on? I was completely astonished. Just as I thought nothing about this home could surprise me. I was completely shocked to know that for once I was not alone and that people from all over the world were going through the same thing. For some reason, it brought me comfort. About 3 years now, he replied. How does this thing decide who to attack? Why me? Why you? Why all the other people? I asked. I don't know. It tends to jump from person to person. It will latch onto someone and terrorize them until it finds someone else. It got to the point where I couldn't even go over to the other people's homes because when I did the next morning, I would be getting a call talking about things that had happened after I left. Just like that. I was free of it and it would latch onto somebody else. In fact, this is the first time that I have seen it in at least 3 years. I thought it was gone forever. So, how crazy is it that all of these people, including his wife, they're all connected to this house. They're all connected to each other, right? We get that. Does everybody get that? It's crazy. How did it attach to you? I asked, hoping that maybe we could make sense of the situation. Well, it was a late night, around 2 in the morning. I got a call from one of my best friends. She seemed frantic. She was staying at her parents' house with her fiance while her parents were out of town, and she asked me to come over immediately. They lived about an hour away, but I could tell by her voice that something was very wrong. I figured that maybe they had a fight and she just needed someone to console her. So, they lived in the middle of nowhere out in farmland, kind of like this place. Their neighbors had horses, and there was a large field of corn behind their home. Her family was really well off, so while the outside of the home looked like a 2-story log cabin, inside was luxurious. I got to the home around 3:30, and I walked in the front door to find them both sleeping on the couch in the living room with all the lights and TV on. This didn't strike me as odd. They would often crash out on the couch after a late night of having some drinks and watching TV. She had woken up and thanked me for coming and lay back down and fell back asleep. I figured whatever issue they had earlier the night had worked out. I sat down in her reclined back and fell asleep. The next day we hung out, had some drinks, and grilled on the massive grill in their backyard. At around 1 in the morning that night, we all decided to turn in. That night, they decided to sleep in the master bedroom on the first floor, so I went to sleep in one of the bedrooms on the second floor. There was suddenly loud bangs coming from the attic, coming in sets of 3. Each thud was so hard that the house began to shake, and a small crack began appearing on the ceiling above the hallway. Sets of 3. If we ever had any doubt that's what's here is demonic. They're gone now, Tom said. Then he focused his attention towards me. The demonic tend to go do things in sets of 3 and attempts to mock the Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. I nodded my head. Well, normally this would have scared the hell out of me. I was far too invested in her story. We need to find a solution. So you were on the second floor, I said, enticing him to continue. Yes, I was on the second floor. The second floor had 2 bedrooms connected by a long hallway. You could look from one bedroom to the next. And about halfway through the hall was a bathroom. Then, right after you passed the bathroom, the hall opened up a little bit into almost a dressing room. On one of the sides, you had racks with hangers, where you could hang clothes on the other side. Those had big mirrors with lights around them, with a chair and shelves. It was like what you see at a movie star set. Once I got to the bathroom, I felt around for a light switch and couldn't find one in there. Whoever built that home really wanted to hide all of the light switches for some reason, I swear. So I used the bathroom with the door open to allow the light that was in the hallway to illuminate the bathroom just enough. After I got done, I stepped out into the hallway and something caught my eye in the other bedroom down the hall. There was somebody sitting on the bed facing away from me, hunched over. I figured that they had gotten into a fight again just like the previous night. I slowly walked towards the room. After I got halfway to the bedroom, I realized that it wasn't either of them. Then out of nowhere, it stood up and faced me. I couldn't make out any details. It was just a shadow. The thing that initially threw me was that although it was pitch black up here, the figure was darker than the darkness around it. It was beyond pitch black. I don't know how to explain it. I know exactly what you're talking about, Sam said. After it stood up, it began to approach me. The next thing that really surprised me is not only moved quickly, but I could tell it wasn't walking. When people walk, they have an up and down movement to them. Not with this, it was floating towards me, almost like it was a conveyor belt, like you see at the airport. Were you scared? I asked. Honestly, this happened so fast I didn't have time to feel fear. The only thing that I remember is that when it got within 4 feet of me, I thought to myself, well, this is the end. The entity passed right through me. I was thrown back so far that I was partly in the bathroom. Herb was shaking. The tears started to form in the right of his eye. He grabbed the jar of moonshine and in one gulp drank what was remaining. It was awful. It was so dark and evil that this is going to sound crazy. I used to think that I sounded crazy until you guys came here. Trust me, you won't sound crazy. It was like a movie. You know, the ones you see, the jittering noise caused by the projector scanning through all of the frames. I nodded my head. It was all horrible. I saw war, fear, death, famine, children starving to death or being killed. I saw bombs exploding and people running away, skin melting off their bones while they screamed in horror. It was like every bad thing in the world played right there before my eyes in an instant. I was overcome with despair and began to lie there in the fetal position, sobbing. I couldn't shake it, and I can't to this day. I never wanted to sleep because I knew you would be there to haunt my dreams. It caused me to lose all hope in humanity and question the purpose of even living when such horrible things happen to people every single day. I was never a religious person, but I stopped believing in even the possibility of there being a God, because if there was one, why would he allow things to happen? The feeling I had that night, I knew this was nothing but pure evil. Did it just disappear afterwards? Herb shook his head. No, it headed towards the stairs. Did your friend see it? Well, as I saw it approach the stairs, I made one of the stupidest decisions of my entire life. I challenged it. Leave my friends alone. Don't you be a coward and come face me. Herb paused and looked down at the empty jar. Then it turned around and came towards me. It was still floating, but moving much slower this time. Slow enough for me to realize this could be the last thing I ever saw. It was lying on the ground, and I was still lying on the ground, and for some reason I quickly jumped to my feet. I don't know if it was the adrenaline that took over me, or I just didn't want to die as a coward in a fetal position. It was a good 10 feet away from me, and I remember saying, God, if you're real now, it is the time to show it. If I have ever needed you in my life, now is the time. After I said this, I quickly lost all fear. I don't know how to explain it. My body had this warmth inside. It wasn't fear, a fever warmth, or fear warmth, but an unexplainable, calming, angelic warmth. I saw this bright light illuminating from my body. It was bright enough to light up the entire hall, yet the entity was still darker than the night. It continued to head towards me, Once it was 5 feet from me, it was like I left my body. Out of nowhere, I started shouting what had to be biblical verses at it. Like I said before, I was not the religious type. I had never read the Bible before, and I only somewhat knew the cliche verses. These were verses that I never heard before. The craziest part about it was in my head. I was standing there thinking, what is going on here? What am I saying? How am I saying this? Somebody or something had overtaken my body. Something pure. What happened after that? I asked. I could tell that Herb was feeling better after talking about this. It disappeared right in front of me. It was just gone. He dropped his head back down and placed his hands in his head. Then it was over. He was just gone, I asked. Not quite, Tom replied. That was for a couple of months. Besides the constant nightmares, everything was alright. Then one day, things just got so bad. It started when I was sitting in the living room and I heard a loud crash in the kitchen. I went to see what had happened and every cabinet was open with stuff thrown all over the floor. Then the footsteps, knocks started. Every night I tried to sleep. I would hear footsteps coming down the hall, stomping on my door. It scared the hell out of me. Finally, he started appearing in my room every night. I would look up and he was standing right next to my bed, watching me. He never did anything other than watch me sleep. Well, that's until things started flying around my room. I had a heavy frame poster hanging around my room, but they wouldn't stay up. They were all thrown to the ground. How did you get rid of them? Of him, I asked. Well, I ended up adopting him, Tom said, with half a smirk on his face. So you've seen him too? Tom nodded. He almost killed my dog. He damn sure tried. When we first heard about this case, we couldn't help but think that he was involved, but it didn't seem possible. Like, it'd be too big of a coincidence, you know. I thought he was gone from our lives, at least for a while. But here we are. What do he do to you? Suddenly, this had become a support group for me. Almost like Alcoholics Anonymous, but was for things that go bump in the night. I couldn't help but to think that we were all brought here together for a reason. From the days that I spent in the driveway of the home determined to buy it, to the years prior when Irv first had his experiences with this entity. It was all too far-fetched to believe that there wasn't a purpose. Well, it started after he spent the night. That following night, I heard someone walking around my upstairs. I live alone. I knew no one else was up there. It was around 3 in the morning, and I live well out in the country, away from any neighbors. I jumped out of bed, grabbed my gun. I went upstairs, cleared out the rooms, and found absolutely nothing. But I knew something was there. Then he saw a dark figure standing outside his door. After I was done having a heart attack, I ran outside at once, again to find nothing. He paused and looked at the floor while turning completely white in the face. Then it started with my dog. I have a corgi, so a small, relaxed dog. She used to sleep with me in my bed every night. Then all of a sudden, I used to hear her cry and growl at night while she was running around the house. It struck me odd because she had never acted that way since I had gotten her. One night, I was lying on the couch late at night. I had a giant painting that hangs over my couch. It has to weigh a good 50 pounds. I heard rattling and looked over and saw it shaking. My first instinct was to we were having an extremely rare earthquake, but something else was shaking. Out of nowhere, that painting lifted up off the wall and flew a good 10 feet across the room, landing on my dog. I know it was trying to kill her, and thank God it didn't. She is the only thing I have, and I don't know what I would do without her. was experiencing, and he instantly knew what was going on. This is when we both decided to get into the paranormal, to look for answers and helping people who are in the same situations. This seems like too many coincidences, I said. I get drawn to this home only to find it's been in my wife's family for decades. Then you get drawn into the home haunted by the same demon that's been terrorizing you for years. I just don't get it. Herb shrugged. I don't get it either. All I know is that we have to do. All I know is that we have to do the son of a bitch in once and for all. We have done battle once before, and I am ready to do it again. Chapter 12. Next time, for the last part of the Taylor Mill horror. House haunting. A true story. This gets very good in the end and right now. So I hope you all are enjoying the story as much as I am. And I wish you all the best. Have a great evening. Thank you for subscribing. Please subscribe if you haven't. I would really appreciate it. It helps me out a lot.